Hey guys, it's Wingy here and welcome to another episode of my top 3 best and worst of the Doctors. Now, I haven't actually done this for a fair few months now, so I thought I would get back into the swing of things, and for the first episode of 2021, as you can tell from the title and thumbnail, we are going to be talking about my personal best 3 stories from Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor. This is in no particular order. This is also totally subjective, so if you happen to disagree and you're going to say, where's that story, where's this story, don't matter. You can have your own top 3, this is just mine. Starting things off, I'm going to go with his very first story, which is Power of the Daleks. Now this is a story that, for the longest time, I didn't give it credit. Like, I've done videos before where I've spoken about my favourite post-regeneration stories and stuff like that, and I just didn't rate it that highly. And frankly, I was a fucking moron. The original animation in 2016, I think that's when it came out. Yeah, it would have been because it was the 50th anniversary of it. It just didn't really do it for me initially. But having rewatched it and obviously having seen the newer animation as well, the story has massively grown on me. It is probably one of my favourite Dalek stories ever. I think this story had to be so many different things and it had to nail every single one of them. It had to be a great story first and foremost. It had to be a great Dalek story, and it also had to introduce a brand new Doctor, because at the time this was unheard of. The Doctor had never regenerated before. And the thing is, Power does absolutely nail every single one of those things. What I love about it is that it doesn't dwell too much on the regeneration stuff. It does deal with it, but it doesn't take up the entirety of the story. I typically hate those post-regeneration stories where the Doctor is out of action for the majority of it or for a significant part of it, such as Castrovalva, the Christmas Invasion, stories like that. I like it when the Doctor just regenerates and starts getting involved with the story. I also like the fact that because the Doctor had 2 companions in Ben and Polly, you've got Polly who generally sort of accepts that the Doctor's changed, and then you've got Ben who thinks, well, who is this imposter? I quite like that dynamic. But Patrick Troughton has the most difficult job out of all the Doctors because he's the first new Doctor. And the thing is, Troughton nails it, and what he actually becomes is the template for pretty much every Doctor that follows. So credit to Patrick in that, because this story had to be flawless from him, and he is pitch perfect in every scene. But it's not just a post-regeneration story, it's also a Dalek story. See, the thing is, people bang on about Genesis, and I love Genesis of the Daleks as well, but it isn't really a Dalek story. Resurrection I love, but I admit it has its flaws. Remembrance I think is also a very good Dalek story, and there's a couple in the Hartnell era that I quite enjoy, but for me this is probably, as an out-and-out Dalek story, probably the best of the classic era, I've got to say. I just love that the Daleks are these scheming, evil little bastards. Weirdly, it's not something that we see enough of, particularly in the modern era. I've noticed. I don't really see Daleks trying to manipulate people. I just see them be these weapons of mass destruction type things, which, I mean, either way I think works for them. But I really like how clever the Daleks are in this story. It really adds to the tension of the story because you as the audience are fully on board with the Doctor. You know that these things are bad, but everybody else in the story, they don't see it that way. The music in this is sublime as well. I enjoy the pacing of this story. It's really well paced for a 6-part story, and it needs to be, because trust me, 6-part stories can sometimes drag. I really like Lesterson as a character. I love his story arc, from seeing him as this budding scientist to practically insane by the end of the story. It's borderline a perfect Doctor Who story, and if I didn't mention it in this list, I'd be doing a disservice to the Troughton era. Next up then, I'm going to be talking about another 6-part story. I think. Is it 6 parts? If it's not, now that's embarrassing. Well, at the very least, it's another animation. And that is the Terran. Now, this is a story that, if I'm honest, I didn't think I'd like. I didn't think that I would enjoy this story. Now, for me personally, it's a bit difficult to properly judge this story because I haven't seen the original, as most people haven't. However, what we get with the animation really makes me fall in love with it. Now, the story itself, don't get me wrong, is great. But I do think that the animation does somewhat improve this, particularly from the angle of the Macra themselves. I have actually done a review of the Macra Terror in its entirety, so I'm not going to go into massive detail about the plot and stuff, but I'll tell you why it's one of my favourite Troughton stories. It's one of those stories to me where when you first watch it, you like it, but then you think about it, and then you keep thinking about it, and the more and more you think about it, the more and more you enjoy it, the more and more you think about, oh, actually that moment was really cool. I really like when the Doctor did that, that was quite funny. I really like that moment with the Macra where it jumps down, that was really creepy. Like, there's so many moments in this story where the more and more you think about them, the more and more you just think, yeah, this is actually a top tier Doctor Who story. And like I say, I do think that the animation played a big part in that, because I've seen pictures of the original Macra and they look fucking shit. Of course, with animation, you can go a little bit further than you would be able to back in the 60s because of budget reasons and special effects and technologies that weren't around, etc, etc. But the story itself is so good, and it is so well written. Again, it's kind of similar to Power of the Daleks in the sense of there's this evil force looming over this tightly knit society. But what I like about this story as well is the fact that Ben goes to the dark side for a little bit. That's quite fun. And I love the reveal of the Macra at the end where you see them in that room. It's actually quite creepy. And again, Troughton is fantastic. I think he just carries quite a few scenes. And that's not me saying that the scenes themselves are bad, but he just elevates them to the point where everybody just doesn't look like they're on his level. He is such a fantastic Doctor. And then finally, this is probably going to be a controversial choice in the sense of I've not picked the War Games. Sorry about that. However, I'm going to have to go with the Invasion. Now, if you watch my channel, and you have done for a fair few years, whenever I've spoken about the Troughton era, I've brought up the Invasion. So I do apologise if I repeat myself here, or if everyone's just like, there he is again talking about stories that he always fucking talks about. But I can't deny it. The Invasion is my favourite Troughton story. I'm not actually ranking these, by the way, or rating them from worst to best or anything, but The Invasion is my favourite Troughton story. It's the first one that I saw, I believe. 8 parts long, shouldn't fucking work, should be too long. The Cybermen don't even appear until the end of part 4, I don't think. Like, what is it about this story that I like? Because it has all the tropes of stories that I think have great moments in them, but are just too long, too bloated, etc. But everything about this story just seems to work and fall into place. One thing that I do really like about it, which is weird saying this for a Troughton video, but I love the fact that this was the template for the Jon Pertwee era. This is 100% a story that you could see in probably season 7. I love the dynamic though of Troughton with Unit and the Brigadier. I think it works so well, and it is such a shame that this story came so late in his era, because I really would have loved another story like this. And yes, before people say, I am aware of the Web of Fear, but as in that doesn't feel like a proper Unit story yet, because Unit hadn't been fully formed. I really wish we got another Invasion style story. But aside from that, this story has a lot going for it, and a lot that totally fucking works. I love Kevin Stoney in this story. I think he is fantastic as the human villain. Yes, he is a little bit caricature and he is a little bit mustache twiddling, but he just plays it to perfection. The way that he delivers lines, the way that he sort of talks down to people, the way that he barks orders at Packer, it's just fantastic to watch. I love the atmosphere in this story. The music in this story is brilliant as well. The scenes where there's people creeping around, like in the rail yard for example, or when they're in the sewers and the Cybermen around, and especially like when the Cybermen come out of the sewers and start invading London, like that is one of the great and iconic moments of Doctor Who for a reason. See, 11-year-old me watching this story was hooked totally from start to finish, and considering that there's some stories where I have to watch them over multiple days because I just can't stick with them, I need to have a little bit of a break because they're that long. Me at 11, whose attention deficit already wasn't great, would sit and watch the entire fucking thing, which is essentially 2 Doctor Who stories in length for those days. That just goes to show how impressive this story actually is to me. Again, similar to Power of the Daleks, I don't think I have a fault with this story really. It is practically faultless. I mean, I never give stories 10 out of 10 because I don't think that anything is perfect. However, this is pretty much there. And the thing is, I know I did say it was a controversial pick because I know a lot of people love the War Games, but this is also a very, very good one. There are a plethora of different stories I could have chosen. I really like The Mind Robber, for example. Web of Fear is another one that I like. Enemy of the World I really enjoy. Tomb of the Cybermen, the War Games, of course. Like, there's so many. But the 3 that I've gone with, I'm happy with, I'm sticking with. They're the ones where I'm just like, yes. For me, these are the best of the Troughton era. In the comments below though guys, let me know what you think. Do you agree with my choices? Do you not? What would your top 3 favourite or best Patrick Troughton stories be? Also in the comments, let me know which Doctor you want to see me do next, and let me know if you want it to be a best of or a worst of. I will be doing all the Doctors pretty much. Classic Doctor, new Doctor. Obviously I've done some already, so whichever one is mentioned the most in the comments, that'll be the next one. However, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description as always, so if you would follow me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But until next time guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye.